Widespread ignorance and loss of religious knowledge. According to Islamic tradition recorded in Sahih Bukhari, one of the earliest signs involves the loss of religious knowledge, but not in the way you might expect. Knowledge isn't forgotten. It's removed through the death of scholars who aren't replaced by qualified successors. The hadith specifically mentions that people will turn to the ignorant for guidance, receiving incorrect answers that lead entire communities astray. This creates a cascade effect where Islamic scholarship centers that once thrived become empty, prayer attendance drops dramatically, and Quran memorization declines across generations. The real danger isn't that the books disappear. It's that people stop seeking authentic knowledge and instead follow whoever sounds convincing on social media or gives them the answers they want to hear, regardless of religious qualification or understanding. Time passing quickly. The Prophet Muhammad described a phenomenon where time itself would seem to accelerate as the end approaches. According to hadith literature, a year would feel like a month like a week, and a week like a single day. Modern interpreters point to our 24/7 connected world where notifications never stop, work emails arrive at midnight, and years seem to vanish in a blur of endless scrolling. The Arabic term baraka, meaning blessing in time, would be removed, leaving people feeling perpetually rushed despite technological advances that should create more leisure. Whether this prophecy is literal or metaphorical remains debated among scholars, but the feeling is universal. Days blend together, calendars flip faster, and everyone seems to be asking the same question: where did the time go? Islamic tradition suggests this acceleration serves as a reminder that the final hour approaches faster than humanity realizes. Increase in killing and bloodshed. Islamic eschatology predicts that killing and violence will spread to such extremes that even the perpetrators won't understand their own motivations. The hadith states that murder will increase to the point where the killer doesn't know why he killed, and the victim doesn't know why he was killed. This contrasts sharply with historical tribal warfare, where conflicts had clear causes like territory, honor, or resources. The prophecy suggests a future where violence becomes so commonplace and senseless that it loses all meaning. Wars will erupt globally with increasing frequency, and bloodshed will become background noise rather than shocking news. Some Islamic scholars point to modern conflicts where ideologies have become so fractured that fighters themselves can't articulate clear objectives. The randomness of violence, from mass shootings to terrorist attacks affecting civilians with no connection to any conflict, eerily mirrors this ancient prediction of meaningless, widespread killing. Women outnumbering men. One of the more specific numerical prophecies mentions a dramatic shift in gender ratios, with some narrations describing as many as 50 women for every single man. According to hadith, this imbalance stems from wars and conflicts that disproportionately kill men, fundamentally altering social structures. The prophecy mentions that one man would be responsible for maintaining or overseeing 50 women, though scholars debate whether this ratio is literal or represents a general severe imbalance. Historical precedents exist in the aftermath of major wars like World War I and World War II, which left significant gender ratio disparities in affected countries. Islamic tradition suggests this imbalance will reach unprecedented levels during the end times, particularly after the catastrophic wars surrounding the major signs. The demographic shift would create massive social challenges in communities traditionally built around family structures, leaving many without traditional support systems. Appearance of 30 false prophets. The Prophet Muhammad specifically warned that approximately 30 false prophets would emerge before the final hour, each claiming to receive divine revelation despite Muhammad being the seal of prophets. These aren't minor liars, but major figures who gather substantial followings and cause significant religious division. Islamic history has already recorded several notable examples, including Musaylima al-Kadhdhab during the Prophet's lifetime, and various claimants in subsequent centuries. The hadith distinguishes these 30 false prophets from the ultimate deceiver, the Dajjal, who comes later as a separate major sign. Each of these impostors claims special spiritual status or direct communication with God, performs supposed miracles, and attracts devoted followers despite contradicting fundamental Islamic teachings. What makes them particularly dangerous, according to Islamic scholars, is their ability to mix truth with falsehood, quoting scripture while twisting its meaning to support their false claims of prophethood. Tall buildings and competition in construction. Perhaps one of the most visually striking prophecies describes barefoot, naked, destitute Bedouin shepherds competing to construct the tallest buildings. This hadith from Sahih Muslim has led many contemporary Islamic scholars to point toward the modern Gulf states, where desert lands transformed within decades into forests of skyscrapers. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai stands at 828 meters, and cities that barely existed 50 years ago now boast some of Earth's most ambitious architectural projects. The prophecy emphasizes competition specifically, not just construction. Height becomes a source of pride and international prestige, with nations racing to claim the title of tallest building. What makes this prophecy remarkable is its specific mention of formerly impoverished desert peoples, a description that accurately characterized the Arabian Peninsula before oil wealth transformed the region. The focus on worldly competition over spiritual development serves as the underlying warning in this sign: spread of adultery and fornication. Islamic tradition predicts a time when extramarital sexual relations would not only become widespread, but openly practiced without shame or concealment. The hadith emphasizes the public nature of this behavior, contrasting it with earlier eras when such acts were hidden due to social stigma. According to Islamic teachings, this represents a fundamental breakdown of family structures and the protective boundaries that maintain social cohesion. The prophecy isn't simply about private sin, which has existed throughout human history, but about the normalization and public acceptance of behavior that Islamic law explicitly prohibits. Scholars note that the key indicator isn't that fornication occurs, but that it happens openly in streets and public spaces without social consequences or shame. This shift from private transgression to public acceptance marks a significant moral turning point in the prophetic timeline. The prediction extends to legal and cultural systems that actively enable or celebrate such relationships rather than discouraging them. Alcohol consumption becoming widespread. The Prophet Muhammad predicted that Muslims in the end times would drink alcohol openly, while calling it by different names to avoid the religious prohibition. This linguistic gymnastics serves to maintain a facade of religious observance while violating clear Islamic law. The hadith suggests people would rename or rebrand intoxicants to create technical loopholes, claiming the prohibition doesn't apply because they're not drinking wine, but some other labeled substance. Modern examples include Muslims justifying consumption of certain alcoholic beverages by distinguishing them from traditional wine, or arguing that fermented drinks below certain percentages don't count. The prophecy highlights not just the consumption itself, but the mental gymnastics and self-deception involved. Rather than openly rejecting the religious rule, people maintain an illusion of compliance through creative reinterpretation. Islamic scholars see this as representing a broader pattern where religious prohibitions are twisted through semantic arguments rather than honestly confronted or followed. Musical instruments and entertainment. According to certain hadith traditions, musical instruments and entertainment would become so prevalent that people would wake up and sleep to music, with entertainment dominating cultural life. It's important to note that Islamic scholars historically and currently disagree significantly on music's permissibility, with some allowing certain forms and others prohibiting most or all music. The prophetic concern isn't about music's existence, but about excessive entertainment replacing spiritual focus and remembrance of God. The hadith describes a society where distraction becomes constant, with people filling every moment with sound and entertainment rather than reflection, prayer, or meaningful human connection. Modern parallels include the omnipresence of headphones, streaming services, and the entertainment industry's cultural dominance. The prophecy suggests this constant stimulation would leave no space for quiet contemplation or spiritual awareness. What matters in the Islamic context isn't the music itself, but the displacement of religious consciousness by perpetual distraction and the prioritization of worldly pleasure over spiritual development. Leaders being the worst of people. Multiple hadith warn that leadership positions would increasingly be occupied by the worst members of society rather than the most qualified or righteous. The prophecy describes rulers who seek power for personal gain, oppress their subjects, and rule through corruption and injustice rather than wisdom and service. According to Islamic tradition, these leaders would be chosen not for their character or competence, but through deception, force, or other corrupt means. The hadith suggests that righteous people would actively avoid leadership roles, while those hungry for power and willing to compromise principles would pursue them aggressively. This creates a negative selection process, where positions of authority attract exactly the wrong candidates. Religious leaders aren't exempt from this prophecy either, with specific warnings about corrupt scholars who sell religious rulings for worldly gain, or distort Islamic teachings to please rulers or popular opinion. The result is a leadership vacuum where those meant to guide communities toward justice instead lead them toward oppression and moral decay. Breaking of family ties. Islamic tradition places enormous emphasis on maintaining family relationships, making the prophecy about severed family ties particularly significant. The hadith predicts widespread disconnection between relatives, with children abandoning elderly parents, siblings becoming strangers, and extended family networks dissolving. What's described isn't just physical distance, but emotional and relational severance, where individualism completely replaces family unity. According to Islamic teachings, maintaining family ties, even with difficult relatives, is a major religious obligation, making this breakdown especially problematic. The prophecy describes elderly parents left alone in their final years, relatives refusing to speak after minor disagreements, and the complete prioritization of personal convenience over family responsibility. Modern examples include nursing home placement without visitation, siblings who stop communicating for years over inheritance disputes, and adult children who ghost their parents. The sign represents not just changing family structures, but the loss of fundamental values around honoring kinship bonds that Islam considers essential to healthy society. Disobedience to parents, closely related to broken family ties. This sign specifically addresses children's treatment of their parents. The hadith describes a role reversal, where children command their parents rather than respecting them, and parents actually fear their own children's anger or reactions. In Islamic tradition, kindness and obedience to parents ranks immediately after worshiping God alone in importance, making this predicted inversion particularly striking. The prophecy isn't about normal childhood rebellion, but about systematic disrespect and mistreatment of elderly parents by adult children who should be caring for them. According to the hadith, children would become angry and aggressive toward parents, treating them as burdens or obstacles rather than honored family members deserving respect and care. Islamic scholars note, this represents a complete collapse of the generational wisdom transfer that traditionally characterized Muslim societies, where elders were valued for experience and knowledge. The prediction extends to children openly insulting parents, making major life decisions against parental advice purely out of spite, and abandoning parents when they become elderly or ill. Increase in earthquakes. The Prophet Muhammad listed increasing earthquakes among the signs of the approaching hour, predicting more frequent and widespread seismic activity as the end times draw near. While skeptics note that improved seismological equipment means we simply record more earthquakes than ancient peoples could detect, the prophecy specifically mentions earthquakes becoming a notable phenomenon that people recognize as unusual. According to Islamic tradition, these natural disasters serve as divine warnings, shaking humanity both literally and metaphorically to remind them of God's power and the earth's temporary nature. The hadith doesn't specify exact frequency or magnitude, but emphasizes a general increase that would be noticeable to contemporary observers. Major earthquakes throughout Islamic history have often sparked religious revival as people interpreted them as reminders of Judgment Day. The prophecy suggests that as the hour approaches, geological instability would become increasingly common, with the Earth itself beginning to show signs of the cosmic transformation to come. Whether this represents actual increased frequency or simply better documentation remains debated among scholars. Conquest of Constantinople. This sign involves the Islamic conquest of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, but with significant scholarly debate about its fulfillment. The hadith describes a peaceful conquest achieved through takbir, the proclamation of Allahu Akbar, rather than warfare. The Ottoman conquest of Constantinople in 1453 CE by Mehmed II fulfilled this for many scholars, as it brought the Byzantine capital under Islamic rule. However, other scholars argue that because the 1453 conquest involved military siege, rather than the peaceful method described in hadith, the prophecy remains unfulfilled and refers to a future event. According to some narrations, this conquest would occur shortly before the Dajjal's appearance, linking it to the major sign sequence. The debate centers on whether the historical Ottoman conquest satisfied the prophecy's conditions, or whether another conquest, perhaps involving the city's spiritual rather than political transformation, is yet to come. This disagreement among Islamic scholars highlights how, even with seemingly clear prophecies, interpretation remains complex. The Mahdi. The Mahdi represents the first of the major signs and serves as a pivotal figure in Islamic eschatology. According to hadith, he will be a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima, bearing the Prophet's own name Muhammad, with specific physical characteristics including a prominent forehead. The Mahdi will emerge from the east during a time of extreme chaos and injustice, uniting Muslims under righteous leadership and filling the earth with fairness after it has been filled with oppression. Islamic tradition describes his rule lasting between 7 and 9 years, during which he restores true Islamic governance and prepares humanity for the subsequent trials. Importantly, the Mahdi is not a prophet, but a righteous leader, guided by existing Islamic teachings. He will be recognized reluctantly, with narrations suggesting he initially resists leadership before accepting the role. His emergence marks the transition from minor signs to the major apocalyptic events, including his eventual partnership with Jesus after the latter's return. Sunni and Shia traditions differ significantly in their understanding of the Mahdi, with this description representing the mainstream Sunni perspective. The Dajjal. The Dajjal, meaning the deceiver or false messiah, represents the greatest trial humanity will ever face according to Islamic tradition. His physical description is remarkably specific. He will be blind in his right eye, which will bulge out like a floating grape, and the Arabic word kafir, meaning disbeliever, will be written on his forehead in a way that only believers can read, regardless of literacy. According to extensive hadith narrations, the Dajjal will emerge from between Syria and Iraq and travel the entire earth in 40 days, with each day having different lengths. Only Mecca and Medina will remain protected from his entry, guarded by angels. The Dajjal will perform seemingly miraculous acts, including bringing what appears to be paradise and hell with him. Though they are reversed, his paradise is actually hellfire, and his hell is actually paradise. He will claim divinity, commanding the sky to rain and the earth to bring forth vegetation. His followers will primarily be Jews according to the hadith, along with others deceived by his false miracles. His reign of deception ends when Jesus returns and kills him at Lud, present-day Lydda in Palestine. Return of Jesus. Islamic eschatology describes Jesus, known as Isa ibn Maryam, returning to earth as one of the major signs. According to detailed hadith accounts, he will descend at the white minaret in Damascus, Syria, wearing 2 yellowish garments with his hands placed on the wings of 2 angels. His return occurs during the time of the Mahdi. And notably, Jesus will pray behind the Mahdi, demonstrating that he returns as a follower of Islamic law rather than establishing a new religion. After his descent, Jesus will pursue and kill the Dajjal at the Gate of Lud. He will then break the cross, symbolically ending Christianity's claim of his divinity, and abolish the jizya tax, indicating that only Islam will be accepted. Islamic tradition states Jesus will rule for 40 years, during which he will marry, have children, and establish justice across the earth by implementing Islamic Sharia. After this period, he will die a natural death and be buried in Medina next to the Prophet Muhammad. This portrayal presents Jesus as a prophet and human, not divine, reinforcing core Islamic theology. Gog and Magog, Ya'juj and Ma'juj, known as Gog and Magog, represent two corrupt nations or tribes imprisoned behind a barrier built by Dhul-Qarnayn, mentioned in the Quran. According to Islamic eschatology, they will break through this barrier after the Dajjal's death during Jesus' rule on earth. Their numbers will be so enormous that when they pass Lake Tiberias, also known as the Sea of Galilee, they will drink it completely dry. The Quran and Hadith describe them as spreading overwhelming destruction across the earth, killing people and devastating everything in their path. In their arrogance, they will shoot arrows at the sky, claiming they've defeated everyone on earth and even conquered heaven. The remaining Muslims, led by Jesus, will be forced to take refuge on Mount Tur, praying for deliverance. Allah will answer by sending a disease or parasite that attacks their necks, killing all of them overnight. Their corpses will cover the earth, creating a terrible stench, until Allah sends birds to remove the bodies and rain to cleanse the land, preparing for the final sequence of events. 3 major landslides. Islamic eschatology includes 3 catastrophic landslides or earth swallowings among the 10 major signs. According to Hadith, these will occur in 3 distinct locations, one in the east, one in the west, and one specifically in the Arabian Peninsula. The term used suggests not just earthquakes or landslides, but the earth literally swallowing entire communities or regions. The Hadith provides minimal detail about these events compared to other major signs, leaving scholars to debate whether east and west refer to specific geographical locations or are metaphorical descriptions. Some interpretations suggest these could be massive sinkholes or geological collapses on unprecedented scales. The Arabian Peninsula event receives slightly more specific mention in some narrations, possibly indicating a catastrophe in the Islamic heartland. These 3 landslides represent divine punishment or natural consequences of the cosmic destabilization occurring as the world approaches its end. They're listed alongside other major signs, like the Dajjal and the return of Jesus, indicating their scale and significance transcend normal natural disasters. The Great Smoke. The Great Smoke, mentioned in Surah Ad-Dukhan of the Quran and elaborated in Hadith, will be a thick smoke covering the entire earth for 40 days. This isn't localized pollution, but a global atmospheric phenomenon, visible worldwide simultaneously. According to Islamic tradition, the smoke will affect disbelievers and believers differently. For disbelievers, it will be intensely painful, affecting them like severe intoxication or illness. For believers, the effect will be milder compared to symptoms of a common cold. This differential impact serves to distinguish and test people, revealing their true faith during the trial. Interestingly, some early Islamic scholars believed this prophecy was fulfilled during the Prophet's lifetime, during a severe drought, but the consensus among later scholars is that it refers to a future event among the major signs. The smoke blotting out the sun and covering the sky creates an apocalyptic atmosphere, reminding humanity of God's power and the approaching end. Its 40-day duration parallels other significant periods in Islamic and broader religious tradition. The beast from the earth. Dabat al-Ard, the beast from the earth, is one of the strangest major signs. According to the Quran and Hadith, this creature will emerge from the earth, most likely from Mecca near the hills of Safa and Marwa. The beast will carry the staff of Moses and the seal of Solomon, tools of previous prophets, and will speak to humanity directly. Its primary function is to mark people permanently on their foreheads, distinguishing believers from disbelievers. Believers will have their faces shine or be marked in a way that shows their faith, while disbelievers' faces will darken or be marked with their rejection. Physical descriptions vary wildly in different narrations, with some describing it as having mixed features from various animals. The beast appears when humanity has completely abandoned the duty of enjoining good and forbidding evil, a core Islamic obligation. Its appearance represents the final warning, after which the door of repentance will close. No one can change their status after being marked by the beast. Your fate is sealed based on what you believed before this sign manifested. Sun rising from the west. Perhaps the most dramatic cosmic sign involves the sun literally rising from the western horizon instead of the east. This represents a complete reversal of Earth's rotation or the sun's apparent motion, witnessed simultaneously by all of humanity. According to multiple authentic hadith, this is the absolute deadline for repentance. The Prophet Muhammad stated clearly that once the sun rises from the west, the door of repentance closes forever. Disbelievers cannot convert to Islam, and Muslims cannot seek forgiveness for their sins after this moment. Faith becomes worthless if it wasn't established before this sign. The finality makes this one of the most significant events. It represents the point of no return. Islamic theology teaches that Allah accepts sincere repentance up until this specific moment. But once the sun rises from the west, everyone's fate is sealed based on their state before the sign. The cosmic impossibility of this event, something that violates all natural laws, serves as undeniable proof of divine power, leaving no room for doubt or excuses. Shortly after this sign, the final destruction of the world begins. Fire from Yemen driving humanity. The final major sign before the hour itself is a massive fire that will emerge from Yemen, specifically from the crater of Aden, according to some narrations. This isn't a typical wildfire, but an apocalyptic blaze that will drive all remaining humanity northward toward the Levant, specifically the region of Greater Syria. According to hadith, the fire will travel behind people, pushing them from behind like a shepherd herding animals. When people stop to rest, the fire stops. When they move, it continues pushing them forward. This creates a final exodus of all surviving humans toward their ultimate gathering place. The fire doesn't immediately kill, but compels movement, ensuring everyone arrives at the same destination for the final moments before the hour. Islamic tradition describes this as the last sign directly before the Day of Judgment itself, with the actual hour following very shortly after humanity's gathering in Syria. The emergence specifically from Yemen holds geographical and possibly volcanic significance, though the scale described far exceeds any natural phenomenon. This fire completes the sequence of major signs and signals that creation's end has finally arrived. The death of the prophet. The first crack in the wall appeared in 632 CE, and according to the companions who witnessed it, they understood immediately what it meant. The Prophet Muhammad himself described his own death as the opening of a door between his people and tribulation, a door that would never, ever close again. Companions reported that after his passing, they could feel something had shifted permanently in the world, not just in grief, but in the very texture of time itself. Every sign that follows, every warning, every catastrophe on this list only became possible after this moment. Think of it less as an ending and more as the removal of a dam. Everything held back by his presence on earth began, slowly at first, to flow through. The conquest of Jerusalem. The prophet told his companions that two things would happen in sequence. Muslims would conquer the city of Jerusalem, and then a devastating plague would follow. Under the Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab in 637 CE, Jerusalem was taken. Within 2 years, the plague of Amwas had swept through the region, killing an estimated tens of thousands, including senior companions of the Prophet like Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. The precision of this prophecy is what Islamic scholars point to most often. Not just one event, but two, in the correct order, in the correct location. It is one of the most historically verifiable sequences in Islamic eschatology, and it set the pattern for everything that came after. The Great Plague. The Prophet described a plague that would consume people the way livestock disease tears through a herd. Fast, indiscriminate, and with no regard for rank or piety. What made the plague of Amwas particularly striking was that it killed the faithful and the powerful alongside everyone else, including some of the most beloved companions of the Prophet. Rather than framing death by plague as punishment, Islamic tradition frames it as mercy. Those believers who died were counted as martyrs, which turned a catastrophe into something unexpectedly dignified. Scholars debate whether this sign refers exclusively to the Amwas plague or to plagues as recurring markers throughout history. But either way, the message is consistent. Mass death by disease is woven into the fabric of the end times. The spread of wealth until no one accepts charity. According to a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, a time will come when wealth becomes so abundant across the earth that a man will walk through the streets with gold in his hand, offering it to anyone who will take it, and find no one willing. Not because people are generous, but because everyone already has enough. This sounds like paradise, but the Prophet framed it as a warning sign, not a blessing. A brief, disorienting moment of material saturation before the world tips back into chaos. The abundance is temporary. The confusion it creates is the point. A society that no longer knows how to receive charity has already begun to lose something essential about itself. Widespread tribulations and fitna. The Arabic word fitna covers a range of meanings: trial, temptation, civil strife, chaos, and the Prophet used it to describe what the end times would feel like on a daily level. He described a time when tribulations would fall like rain, one after another, with no pause between them. Most chilling was a specific detail narrated in both Bukhari and Muslim. A man would wake up a believer and go to sleep a disbeliever, his convictions swept away by a single day's events. Neighbor would turn against neighbor. Communities would fracture. Each wave of fitna would make the next one feel normal, lowering the threshold of what people could be shocked by until nothing shocked anyone at all. The killing will increase. The companions once asked the Prophet to explain what he meant by harj, the Arabic word he used for the killing that would increase near the end of times. He answered not with a speech, but with a gesture, mimicking the act of striking again and again. Narrated in Sahih Bukhari, the sign describes a world where killing becomes so frequent and so senseless that neither the killer nor the victim can explain how it started or why. It goes beyond war, beyond politics, beyond revenge. It is violence that has lost its reason, which in many ways is the most frightening kind. Time will seem to pass faster. Narrated in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet described a future where time itself would feel contracted, a year passing like a month like a week like a single day. Scholars have long debated whether this refers to a literal change in how time moves or a psychological experience of acceleration driven by distraction, busyness, and the erosion of meaningful routine. Either interpretation leads to the same destination, a world moving so fast that people lose their footing, lose their sense of where they are in history, and stop noticing what is slipping away. The feeling of time disappearing is itself the warning. The rise of ignorance and disappearance of religious knowledge. The Prophet described the removal of religious knowledge from the world in a way that should be more terrifying than it sounds. He did not say books would be burned or libraries destroyed. He said, according to Sahih Bukhari, that Allah takes knowledge away by taking away the scholars. And when scholars die without being replaced, ignorance fills the space they leave behind. People keep asking questions, but now the people answering them don't know what they're talking about. They give rulings without knowledge, leading others astray while being entirely confident they are helping. The knowledge doesn't vanish all at once. It thins quietly until one day there is almost none left, and most people haven't noticed. Alcohol becomes widespread and accepted. A hadith narrated in both Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah groups several signs together, and the public normalization of alcohol is among them. The sign is not about people quietly drinking in private. It is about wine being consumed openly, without shame, on every corner, as an unremarkable part of daily life. What makes this a sign rather than just a moral complaint is the word accepted. The point is not the behavior itself, but the disappearance of any social resistance to it. A society that has lost the reflex to question what it consumes has already changed in ways that go deeper than what is in the glass. Music becomes normalized. In the same cluster of signs mentioned alongside alcohol and public immorality, the Prophet described musical instruments becoming ubiquitous, heard everywhere, in streets and homes, without hesitation or reflection. Narrated in Ibn Majah, the sign is less about the sound itself and more about what it drowns out. The concern in Islamic tradition is not a surface-level discomfort with entertainment, but the replacement of remembrance with noise. A world so saturated with stimulation that silence, reflection, and awareness of God become increasingly difficult to access. The adhan still sounds. It just can't be heard over everything else. Women outnumber men dramatically. Narrated in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet described a time when women would outnumber men so dramatically that the ratio would reach 50-1, though scholars debate whether this figure is literal or symbolic. What the hadith makes clear is the cause: the increase in killing among men. Wars, conflicts, the kind of senseless Harj described earlier, systematically thinning the male population until the demographic structure of entire societies collapses. This is not a standalone sign. It is what happens downstream from the violence. The signs are not random. They build on each other, each one creating the conditions for the next. The barefoot shepherds, competing in building tall structures. In the famous hadith of Jibreel, narrated in Sahih Muslim, the angel Gabriel appeared to the Prophet in human form and asked him about the signs of the hour. Among the Prophet's answers was this: "You will see the barefoot, the naked, the destitute shepherds competing with one another in constructing tall buildings." The imagery is deliberately stark. People who had nothing, suddenly with everything, and what they choose to build with it are monuments. Scholars have pointed to the rapid urban transformation of the Arabian Peninsula throughout the 20th and 21st centuries as a striking parallel. Whether or not it is the precise fulfillment, the sign captures something true about what power does to people who were not raised with it. Slave women giving birth to their masters. Narrated in the same hadith of Jibreel in Sahih Muslim, this sign sits alongside the tall buildings prophecy and is perhaps the most interpreted sign in the list. Classical scholars read it as a description of social hierarchies collapsing, the natural order of authority, and respect inverting, until children rule parents and the young have no regard for the old. Some modern scholars interpret it more directly as children raised with such permissiveness that they effectively command the households they were born into. The specific imagery is deliberately striking. Both interpretations point toward the same collapse, a world where the structure that holds communities together has quietly come apart. The land of the Arabs returns to rivers and gardens. Narrated in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet stated that the hour will not come until the land of the Arabs returns to being pastures and rivers. Geological evidence confirms that the Arabian Peninsula was once significantly more fertile thousands of years ago, before desertification changed the landscape entirely. This sign reads like a reset, the land returning to its original state before the world ends. What makes it remarkable is its specificity. The prophet did not say the land would become slightly greener. He described rivers and pastures, a fundamental transformation of one of the most arid regions on Earth. Recent years have seen unusually heavy rainfall and greening in parts of Arabia, though scholarly opinion varies on its significance. A fire emerges from the Hejaz. The prophet, in narrations found in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, described a great fire emerging from the land of Hejaz, Western Arabia, so enormous that its light would illuminate the necks of camels as far away as Busra in Syria. That is hundreds of kilometers. In 1256 CE, a volcanic eruption near Medina produced a lava flow that burned for days and was reportedly visible at extraordinary distances, and the majority of classical Islamic scholars identified this event as the fulfillment of this sign. Whether it has already come, or is still to come, is a point of scholarly disagreement, but the scale described in the hadith leaves no room for a small interpretation. The Euphrates reveals a mountain of gold. Narrated in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the prophet warned that the Euphrates River would one day recede to reveal a mountain of gold beneath it, and that wars would be fought over it so devastating that 99 out of every 100 men involved would die. His instruction to whoever is alive when this happens was unambiguous. Take nothing. Leave it. The sign is not really about gold. It is about what human beings do when they see something they want badly enough. How quickly civilization collapses into slaughter when the prize is large enough. The Euphrates has been declining in water levels for decades due to damming and climate change, a detail that has not gone unnoticed by those watching for this sign. Two large groups fight each other despite sharing the same claim. Narrated in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the prophet described two massive armies clashing in a catastrophic battle, despite the fact that both sides claim the same religion, the same allegiance, the same cause. The tragedy embedded in this sign is precise. This is not a war between enemies who hate each other's beliefs. It is a community destroying itself, enormous casualties on both sides, while identical banners fly above both armies. Scholars throughout Islamic history have pointed to various civil conflicts as partial fulfillments. The sign may refer to something still to come. What is certain is the prophet's intention. He described it not to celebrate one side over the other, but to warn that this level of self-destruction is one of the clearest signals that the end is near. 30 or more false prophets appear. According to Sahih Bukhari, the prophet warned that approximately 30 lying claimants to prophethood would appear before the hour, each declaring himself a prophet or messenger sent by God. The function of this sign is not just political or religious chaos. It is desensitization. By the time 30 false prophets have come and gone, each drawing crowds and causing confusion, the population has been conditioned to evaluate claims of prophethood with exhaustion rather than discernment. When the ultimate deceiver finally arrives, the ground has already been softened. Islamic history has documented numerous such claimants across the centuries. The prophet did not say exactly 30, he said approximately 30, which suggests the number is still accumulating. People will wish they were dead from distress. Narrated in Sahih Bukhari, the prophet described a time of such widespread anguish that a man walking through a graveyard would stop at a grave and say, "I wish I were in your place," not out of spiritual longing for the afterlife, simply because being alive has become unbearable. This is the sign that functions as a summary of everything that precedes it: the violence, the lost knowledge, the fitna that never stops, the acceleration of time, the collapse of meaning. When a society reaches the point where the living genuinely envy the dead, something fundamental has broken. The prophet did not describe this as a rare or extreme reaction. He described it as common. That is the sign, the Mahdi. The Mahdi is described in narrations found in Sunan Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah, notably absent from Sahih Bukhari and Muslim as a named figure, which is an important caveat scholars consistently raise. He is described as a man from the family of the Prophet, named Muhammad ibn Abdullah, whose character and appearance mirror those of the Prophet himself. He will emerge when the world is so saturated with injustice and oppression that it can hold no more, and his rule, lasting 7 to 8 years according to various narrations, will fill the earth with the justice it has been drained of. He does not claim prophethood. He is a ruler, not a messenger. His appearance signals that the major signs are no longer distant. They are arriving. The smoke, mentioned explicitly in the Quran in Surah Ad-Dukhan verse 10. The smoke is described as a visible, encompassing cloud that will cover all of humanity. For believers, the Prophet indicated it would pass like a minor illness. For disbelievers, it would be an agonizing torment lasting 40 days. Two significant scholarly opinions exist on this sign. One holds that it already occurred during a severe famine in early Mecca, when hunger caused people to see what appeared as smoke in the air. The stronger and majority position holds that it is still to come as one of the great major signs. The Quran's language is direct. A visible smoke covering the people. And the majority of classical scholars, including Ibn Kathir, held that this has not yet happened. The Dajjal. The Prophet said there is no trial between the creation of Adam and the day of judgment greater than the Dajjal, and he described him in precise physical detail. A one-eyed man, his right eye resembling a protruding grape, with the Arabic letters for disbeliever, KFR, written between his eyes, visible to every believer regardless of whether they can read. He will claim to be God. He will perform apparent miracles, commanding rain, reviving the dead in front of crowds, ordering the earth to produce food, to pull people toward him. His reign will last 40 days, with the first day stretching like a year and the second like a month. Narrated extensively in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, no figure in Islamic eschatology receives more detailed description or more urgent warning than this one. The descent of Isa ibn Maryam. Jesus, son of Mary, will descend near the white minaret east of Damascus, wearing 2 garments dyed with saffron, his hands resting on the wings of 2 angels. This is not a second coming in the sense of a new mission. He descends as a follower of the Prophet Muhammad's law, not as a new prophet. He will find the Dajjal and kill him at a gate called Lud in what is today central Israel. He will then break the cross, abolish the jizya, and usher in an era where one religion covers the earth. According to narrations in Tirmidhi, he will live out a natural human life, marry, and eventually die, being buried in Medina. Narrated in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, his return is among the most unanimously accepted major signs in Sunni Islam, Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Gog and Magog are 2 vast nations, currently sealed behind a barrier constructed by the figure known as Dhul Qarnayn, mentioned in the Quran in Surah Al-Kahf. When the barrier breaks, they will pour out from every elevated place. Moving in numbers so enormous, the Prophet described the ratio as 999 of them for every one believer. They will drink the Sea of Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, completely dry. Jesus and the believers will be driven to Mount Tur for protection, unable to fight a force of that scale. Their end will come not through battle, but through something microscopic. Allah will send a worm that enters their necks overnight, and by morning, every last one will be dead. Rain will then be sent to wash the earth clean of them. 3 great landslides. Narrated in Sahih Muslim in the hadith of Hudhayfa ibn Asid, the Prophet listed 3 massive sinkings of the earth among the major signs. 1 in the east, 1 in the west, and 1 in the Arabian Peninsula. The Arabic word used, khasf, describes a swallowing of the land, entire regions dropping away. The scale is not geological in the ordinary sense. It is described as divine restructuring, not a natural disaster, but a deliberate collapse of the Earth's surface across 3 different regions of the world. They are listed consecutively in the hadith, one after another, as if the Earth is being prepared, reshaped, cleared of what it once held, before the final acts begin. A great fire from Yemen. Narrated in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, a fire will emerge from the direction of Aden in Yemen and drive all remaining people toward their place of final gathering. What makes this fire unlike any other in the list is its behavior. It does not simply burn and spread. It travels with the people. When they rest for the night, it rests behind them. When they wake and march, it follows. It does not destroy them. It herds them, like a shepherd moving a flock toward a destination they may not fully understand. The world at this point has already been emptied of its believers by the cool wind. Those being driven by this fire are the last people remaining on earth. The sun rising from the west. Narrated in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim and referenced in the Quran in Surah Al-An'am verse 158, the sun will rise one morning from the west instead of the east. The natural order that has governed every single day since the beginning of creation will reverse, and the Prophet was specific about what this moment means. The door of repentance will close permanently. The Quran states clearly that on the day certain signs of God appear, no soul will benefit from a faith it did not hold before that moment. This is the point of no return, not dramatically announced, not preceded by a warning bell, just a morning that is different from every other morning in all of human history. And by the time people understand what they are seeing, it is already too late. The beast of the earth. Mentioned in the Quran in Surah An-Naml verse 82, a creature will emerge from the earth and speak directly to humanity. It will mark the faces of people, believers with a luminous mark, disbelievers with a darkening one, making the 2 groups visibly, permanently distinct in a way that cannot be hidden or faked. Some classical narrations describe it carrying the staff of Moses and the ring of Solomon, though these details appear in tafsir traditions rather than the strongest hadith chains. The Quran says it will tell people that they had no certainty in the signs of God. At this point, the time for ambiguity is over. Every person alive will carry their judgment written on their face. A cool wind that takes the souls of all believers. Before the final hour arrives, narrated in Sahih Muslim, Allah will send a gentle, cool wind across the earth. It will find every person who carries even a mustard seed of faith in their heart and take their soul quietly, without violence or suffering. No believer will remain alive to see what comes next. The world will be left entirely to the worst of humanity, those with no faith, no restraint, no mercy. And it is these people who will witness the actual arrival of the hour. The Prophet described them as the most wretched of creation, living like animals, with no memory of what the world once was. The cool wind is the last mercy extended to the faithful. After it passes, mercy itself leaves the earth. The trumpet blast. The angel Israfil will blow the trumpet, referenced in Surah Az-Zumar verse 68, and the first blast will destroy everything that remains. Every mountain, every ocean, every city, every living thing, gone. Then the second blast will come, and everything that has ever lived will rise. The Prophet described the human body as indestructible at its core. Narrated in Abu Dawud, the coccyx at the base of the spine, called Ajib al-Danab, will never decompose, and from it every body will be reconstructed for judgment. People will rise from wherever they fell: the bottom of the sea, the desert sand, the battlefield, the grave, and every soul that has ever drawn breath will stand and face what comes next. Every sign on this list, every warning, every prophet, every book in all of human history was pointing here. 1. Barefoot Bedouin shepherds competing in building tall buildings. According to Islamic tradition, one of the minor signs of the Day of Judgment is that barefoot, destitute Bedouin shepherds will compete in constructing tall buildings. This prophecy appears in the famous Hadith of Gabriel, recorded in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet Muhammad described signs of the end times. Historically, Bedouins were nomadic Arab tribes living in desert tents, herding camels and sheep with minimal material wealth. The transformation began in the 20th century with the discovery of oil in the Arabian Peninsula, particularly in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. Today, these once poor regions boast some of the world's tallest structures. Dubai's Burj Khalifa stands at 828 meters, completed in 2010, while Mecca's clock tower reaches 601 meters. The Kingdom Tower in Jeddah is planned to exceed 1,000 meters. Many Islamic scholars point to this dramatic shift from traditional Bedouin life to modern skyscraper competition as a fulfillment of this prophecy, marking the approaching end times. 2. Loss of trust and honesty. In Islamic eschatology, the widespread loss of trust and honesty represents a fundamental sign of societal collapse before the Day of Judgment. The Prophet Muhammad warned in Sahih Bukhari that when amana, or trust, is lost, people should expect the hour. He described a time when authority would be given to those undeserving of it, when promises would be broken freely, and when betrayal in business and relationships would become normalized. This isn't a single catastrophic event, but a gradual moral erosion affecting all levels of society, from personal interactions to governmental leadership. The hadith emphasizes betrayal of trust in guardianship, trade, testimony, and covenant. Classical scholars like Imam an-Nawawi and Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani interpreted this as the breakdown of the very foundation that holds communities together. When people can no longer rely on each other's word, when contracts mean nothing, and when corruption pervades leadership, Islamic tradition teaches that this moral decay signals the approaching end. Modern observers point to increasing corruption, dishonest business practices, and broken promises at all societal levels as evidence of this prophecy's fulfillment. 3. Increase in killing and bloodshed. Islamic tradition warns that widespread killing and bloodshed, known as al-Harj, will increase dramatically as the Day of Judgment approaches. This sign appears in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet Muhammad described days when killing becomes so common that neither the murderer knows why he killed, nor the victim knows why he was killed. This prophecy encompasses both organized warfare and random violence, suggesting a world where human life loses its sanctity and violence becomes normalized. The 20th and 21st centuries witnessed unprecedented bloodshed through 2 world wars, claiming over 75 million lives, genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, and Bosnia, and ongoing regional conflicts across the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Beyond warfare, modern societies face mass shootings, terrorism, and violent crime at levels previously unimaginable. The Hadith's description of senseless killing, where perpetrators and victims alike don't understand the reason for violence, resonates with contemporary acts of random terrorism and mass violence. Islamic scholars interpret this not merely as war, which has always existed, but as a specific quality of chaos and moral numbness where killing becomes commonplace and its horror no longer shocks society. 4. Time passing quickly. Islamic tradition describes a phenomenon where time itself appears to accelerate as the Day of Judgment approaches. Hadiths recorded in Musnad Ahmad and other collections mention the Prophet Muhammad saying that time will pass rapidly, with a year feeling like a month like a week, and a week like a single day. Scholars have debated whether this refers to a literal physical change in time or a perceptual experience of life's pace quickening. Some classical commentators suggested it means baraka, or blessing, will be removed from time, making people feel they accomplish less despite the same hours available. Modern interpreters point to the acceleration of contemporary life, the 24-hour news cycle, instant communication through the internet, and the constant stimulation of digital devices as potential fulfillments of this prophecy. Historical agricultural societies operated on seasonal rhythms with natural time markers, while modern industrial and information age societies demand constant productivity and rapid response. However, it's important to note that some scholars consider certain versions of this hadith weak in authenticity, and interpretations vary widely regarding whether this sign has been fulfilled or remains future. 5. Spread of adultery and fornication. According to Islamic eschatology, one of the clearer signs of the approaching Day of Judgment is the widespread prevalence of adultery and fornication, becoming so normalized that these acts are committed openly without shame. This prophecy appears in Sahih Bukhari and other authentic hadith collections, where the Prophet Muhammad warned that sexual immorality outside marriage would not only increase, but become publicly accepted rather than hidden. Islamic law strictly prohibits sexual relationships outside of marriage, viewing them as major sins that damage family structures and societal moral foundations. Historically, most cultures maintained strong taboos against such behavior, even if violations occurred privately. The 20th and 21st centuries witnessed significant shifts in sexual norms across many societies, with changing attitudes toward relationships, cohabitation before marriage, and public displays that would have been unthinkable in previous eras. Media, entertainment, and cultural movements have contributed to normalizing what Islamic tradition considers immoral. Scholars point to these cultural shifts as fulfillment of this prophecy, noting that the distinctive element isn't merely that these sins occur, but that they're practiced openly and accepted socially without stigma, indicating a fundamental erosion of moral boundaries that once governed human behavior. 6th, widespread consumption of alcohol. Islamic tradition warns that the consumption of intoxicants will become widespread, with people drinking alcohol and calling it by different names to justify their actions. This sign appears in Sunan ibn Majah and Musnad Ahmad, where the Prophet Muhammad predicted that despite the clear prohibition in Islam, people would consume wine and use euphemistic names to make it socially acceptable. Alcohol is explicitly forbidden in the Quran and considered one of the major sins in Islam. Yet the prophecy indicates a time when even Muslims would participate in its consumption while finding ways to rationalize the behavior through linguistic manipulation. The modern alcohol industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually, with widespread social acceptance in most parts of the world. Terms like spirits, social drinking, and moderate consumption soften the perception of intoxicant use, while marketing presents alcohol as sophisticated or necessary for celebration. Even in some Muslim-majority countries, alcohol remains accessible despite religious prohibitions. The prophecy's emphasis on renaming suggests not just consumption, but a cultural reframing that removes the stigma and guilt associated with violating Islamic law, indicating a deeper moral compromise where forbidden acts become normalized through clever wordplay and social pressure rather than outright rejection of religious teachings. 7. Prevalence of musical instruments. According to hadiths in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet Muhammad warned that people will make lawful the use of musical instruments as a sign of approaching end times. This remains one of the most debated signs among Islamic scholars, as there's significant disagreement about the permissibility of music in Islam. Some scholars interpret certain instruments and contexts as forbidden, while others permit music depending on its content and purpose. The hadith appears alongside other moral signs like adultery and alcohol consumption, suggesting a broader pattern of making prohibited things acceptable. The global music industry today generates hundreds of billions of dollars annually, with streaming platforms providing instant access to virtually unlimited music at all times. Historically, music was limited to live performances and special occasions, but modern technology has made it ubiquitous through smartphones, headphones, radio, television, and public spaces. The prophecy's emphasis on making it lawful suggests not just prevalence, but a theological justification for what some scholars consider prohibited. However, it's crucial to note that Islamic jurisprudence contains diverse opinions on this matter, with some schools of thought permitting certain types of music and instruments, while others maintain stricter prohibitions, making this particular sign's interpretation complex and contentious among scholars. 8. Appearance of women dressed yet naked. Islamic tradition includes a prophecy about women who will be clothed yet appear naked, described in Sahih Muslim as one of the signs preceding the Day of Judgment. The Prophet Muhammad used this seemingly paradoxical phrase to describe women wearing garments that don't properly cover their bodies, according to Islamic modesty standards. The hadith specifies that these women will have heads like the humps of camels, which some scholars interpret as referring to elaborate hairstyles piled high on the head. Islamic teachings prescribe modest dress for both men and women, with specific requirements for covering that vary among different scholarly interpretations. The 20th and 21st centuries witnessed dramatic changes in fashion, with the introduction of transparent fabrics, form-fitting clothing, and revealing styles that technically constitute clothing, but don't fulfill the Islamic definition of modest covering. See-through materials, tight garments that outline the body's shape, and short or exposing cuts have become mainstream in many societies, including some Muslim-majority regions. Many contemporary Islamic scholars point to modern fashion trends as fulfilling this specific prophecy, noting that the distinctive element isn't nudity itself, but rather the wearing of clothes that fail their fundamental purpose of concealment, representing an erosion of modesty standards that Islamic tradition considers essential. 9. Increase in literacy and decrease in religious knowledge. Islamic eschatology describes a paradoxical situation where general literacy and worldly education increase, while religious knowledge simultaneously decreases. This sign appears in Sahih Bukhari and other collections, where the Prophet Muhammad warned that knowledge would be taken away, not by erasing it from people's minds, but through the death of scholars, leaving ignorant people to give religious opinions without proper qualification. The hadith emphasizes that people will seek religious guidance from those who lack authentic knowledge, leading to both questioners and answerers going astray. In the modern era, universal education has spread literacy to unprecedented levels, and the internet provides instant access to vast amounts of information on virtually any subject. However, Islamic scholars express concern that despite this access, fundamental religious literacy has declined among Muslims, with many unable to read Quran with understanding, unaware of basic Islamic jurisprudence, and confused about essential beliefs. Social media and online platforms allow anyone to present themselves as religious authorities without traditional scholarly credentials, chain of authentic transmission, or years of study under qualified teachers. This democratization of religious discourse, while providing wider access, has also created confusion as contradictory and sometimes incorrect information spreads rapidly, fulfilling the prophecy of knowledge disappearing through the absence of properly qualified scholars. 10. Men obey their wives and disobey their mothers. According to hadiths in Sunan ibn Majah and Jami at-Tirmidhi, one sign of the approaching Day of Judgment is that men will obey their wives while disobeying their mothers, representing an inversion of the family hierarchy emphasized in Islamic teachings. Islam places tremendous importance on honoring parents, particularly mothers, with a famous hadith stating that paradise lies beneath the feet of mothers. The Quran commands respect and kindness toward parents multiple times, making disobedience to them a serious sin. However, this prophecy describes a time when the immediate nuclear family relationship takes precedence over the extended family structure, with a man prioritizing his wife's demands over his mother's rights. Modern societal shifts toward nuclear family units, geographic separation from parents, and changing family dynamics have altered traditional structures where multiple generations live together or nearby. The prophecy doesn't suggest that loving one's wife is wrong, but rather points to a problematic imbalance where a man abandons his Islamic duty toward his mother in favor of his wife's wishes, even when those wishes contradict what's right. Contemporary patterns of elderly parents being neglected, placed in care facilities, or having minimal contact with their children, while couples focus exclusively on their immediate households, are interpreted by some scholars as manifestations of this prophesied family breakdown. 11. The Mahdi's appearance. The Islamic tradition teaches that the Mahdi, a guided leader from the Prophet Muhammad's lineage through his daughter Fatima, will appear during a time of great turmoil and oppression as the first of the major signs of the Day of Judgment. Hadiths in Sunan Abu Dawud, Jami at-Tirmidhi, and Sunan ibn Majah describe a man named Muhammad ibn Abdullah who will reluctantly accept leadership and fill the earth with justice after it has been filled with tyranny. According to these narrations, the Mahdi will have a broad forehead and a hooked nose, and people will give him allegiance between the Rukn and Maqam near the Kaaba in Mecca. He will rule for 7, 8, or 9 years, according to different hadith versions, establishing Islamic governance and preparing the way for the subsequent trials involving the Dajjal and the return of Prophet Jesus. It's important to note that while these hadiths are widely accepted in Sunni Islam, scholars debate the authenticity grading of some narrations, and interpretations differ significantly between Sunni and Shia traditions. The Mahdi's appearance represents hope for Muslims during the darkest period of human history, promising that divine justice will prevail before the final tribulations, though the exact timing and circumstances remain known only to Allah. 12. The Dajjal. The Dajjal, meaning the deceiver or false messiah, represents the greatest trial humanity will face before the Day of Judgment, described extensively in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. According to Islamic tradition, he will be a one-eyed man, blind in his right eye, with the Arabic word kafir, meaning disbeliever, written on his forehead in letters that every believer will be able to read regardless of literacy. The Prophet Muhammad described him as having a massive physique, reddish complexion, and curly hair. He will emerge from somewhere between Syria and Iraq according to some narrations, claiming first to be a prophet, and then to be divine itself. The Dajjal will perform false miracles, including commanding the sky to rain, the earth to produce vegetation, and even appearing to resurrect the dead, deceiving vast numbers of people. His trial will last 40 days, with the first day like a year, the second like a month, the third like a week, and the remaining days of normal length. He will travel the entire earth except for Mecca and Medina, which will be protected by angels. According to Hadith, he will be followed by 70,000 Jews of Isfahan and many others who are deceived by his false displays of power. 13th Return of Jesus. According to Islamic tradition recorded in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, Prophet Jesus, son of Mary, will descend from heaven as one of the major signs of the Day of Judgment, appearing at the white minaret in the eastern part of Damascus, Syria. The hadiths describe him descending with his hands resting on the wings of 2 angels, wearing 2 yellow garments, and appearing as a man of medium height, with reddish-white complexion and lank hair. Unlike Christian eschatology, where Jesus returns as divine, Islamic tradition teaches he will come as a prophet and follower of Prophet Muhammad's law, ruling according to Islamic teachings. His primary mission will be to kill the Dajjal, which according to Hadith will occur at the gate of Lud, identified as modern-day Lod in Israel. After defeating the Dajjal, Jesus will break crosses, kill swine, and abolish the jizya tax, symbolically uniting Christianity and Islam under pure monotheism. Various narrations state he will rule for 40 years, though some mention 7, during which time he will marry, have children, and establish a period of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Animals will lose their hostility toward each other, and the earth will produce abundant blessings during his righteous reign before the final trials. 14. Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog, known in Arabic as Ya'juj and Ma'juj, are 2 massive nations or tribes mentioned in both the Quran and authentic hadiths as one of the major signs preceding the Day of Judgment. According to Surah Al-Kahf in the Quran, A righteous king known as Dhul-Qarnayn, often identified with Alexander the Great, constructed a barrier of iron and molten copper to contain these destructive peoples after communities complained of their corruption. Islamic tradition teaches that after Prophet Jesus kills the Dajjal, a small opening will appear in this barrier, which will eventually break completely, releasing Gog and Magog in overwhelming numbers. The hadiths in Sahih Muslim describe them passing by the Lake of Tiberias, known as the Sea of Galilee, and drinking it completely dry. They will fire arrows toward the sky, claiming to have conquered earth and challenging heaven itself. According to the narrations, Jesus and the remaining believers will take refuge on Mount Tur, while Gog and Magog overrun the earth. Their destruction will come not through human effort, but through divine intervention, as Allah will send a type of worm or insect that kills them overnight. Their corpses will create such a stench that birds will be sent to carry the bodies away, cleansing the earth for the final era. 15. The Beast of the Earth. Islamic eschatology describes the emergence of a creature called Dabat al-Ard, or the Beast of the Earth, mentioned in Surah An-Naml of the Quran, which states that when the word comes to pass against people, a beast will emerge from the earth speaking to them that mankind had no certainty in divine signs. According to various hadiths and classical tafsir interpretations, this beast will appear when people have completely abandoned faith and will mark humanity on their foreheads, distinguishing believers from disbelievers. The descriptions of the beast vary significantly across different narrations, with some suggesting it will be a composite creature of enormous size, while others provide different details. Classical scholars mention it will carry the staff of Prophet Moses and the seal of Prophet Solomon, using these to mark people. The mark on believers will say, "This is a believer," while disbelievers will be marked accordingly. Some narrations suggest the beast will emerge from Mecca, specifically near Mount Safa, though other locations are also mentioned in different sources. The appearance of this beast represents a critical moment when the door of repentance closes, meaning that after witnessing this undeniable miraculous sign, faith will no longer be accepted from those who did not believe before, as belief forced by clear proof loses its spiritual merit. 16. The sun rising from the west. According to authentic hadiths in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, one of the major signs of the Day of Judgment is that the sun will rise from the west instead of the east, representing a complete reversal of the natural order established since creation. The Prophet Muhammad stated that the hour will not come until the sun rises from its setting place, and when people witness this undeniable miracle, everyone will believe, but this faith will no longer be accepted. The Quran in Surah Al-An'am, verse 158, supports this concept by stating that on the day certain signs come, belief will not benefit a soul that had not believed before or earned good through their faith. This cosmic reversal will happen suddenly one morning, marking the permanent closure of the door of repentance, as faith compelled by undeniable physical proof loses its spiritual value compared to faith based on conviction and submission to the unseen. Scholars debate the exact sequence of this sign relative to others, with some placing it before the appearance of the beast, while others position it afterward. The astronomical impossibility of such an event under natural laws confirms its miraculous nature, demonstrating Allah's absolute power over creation and signaling that the earth's final days have begun as the natural world collapses in preparation for the end. 17. 3 major landslides. Islamic tradition describes 3 catastrophic landslides or earthquakes as major signs of the approaching Day of Judgment, mentioned in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet Muhammad stated there would be 3 landslides, one in the east, one in the west, and one in the Arabian Peninsula. These are not ordinary earthquakes, but massive land-swallowing events of unprecedented scale and devastation, representing a fundamental destabilization of the Earth's structure itself. The Hadith provides limited detail about these events, leaving the exact locations within these broad regions unspecified, and the timing relative to other major signs somewhat unclear. Classical and contemporary scholars agree that no historical earthquakes, regardless of their severity, fulfill this particular prophecy, as these three landslides represent future catastrophic events distinct from normal seismic activity. The brevity of the hadith has led to various interpretations about what these landslides will entail, but the consensus holds that they will involve portions of land literally opening and swallowing everything above them, causing massive casualties and demonstrating the approaching end of worldly life. These geological catastrophes, along with the other cosmic and earthly disturbances described in Islamic eschatology, paint a picture of creation itself beginning to unravel as the day of judgment draws near, with the very ground beneath humanity's feet becoming unstable and hostile. 18. Smoke covering the earth. According to Islamic tradition, thick smoke will envelop the entire earth as one of the major signs before the day of judgment, mentioned explicitly in the Quran in Surah Ad-Dukhan, verses 10 through 16, which instructs people to wait for the day when the sky brings forth visible smoke that will envelop humanity, causing a painful punishment. Authentic hadiths elaborate that this smoke will last for 40 days according to some narrations, entering people's ears and causing symptoms similar to a severe cold or flu, with believers experiencing less suffering than disbelievers. The afflicted will cry out for relief from this torment, though the smoke will persist for its appointed duration. Some classical scholars, including the companion Ibn Mas'ud, debated whether this prophecy was fulfilled during a severe drought in Mecca during the Prophet's lifetime, when people's hunger was so extreme they saw mirages resembling smoke. But the majority of scholars maintain that this sign remains in the future, as a literal global phenomenon. The smoke represents an atmospheric catastrophe from which no location on Earth will escape, demonstrating that even the sky itself turns hostile during the final tribulations. This sign, like others in Islamic eschatology, emphasizes the complete breakdown of the natural world's normal functioning, as creation moves toward its appointed end, with the very air becoming a source of suffering, rather than life. 19. The fire that drives people to gathering. According to authentic hadiths in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, a massive fire will emerge from Yemen, specifically from the direction of Aden, serving as the final major sign before the day of judgment itself. This fire will drive all remaining people on earth toward the land of gathering, identified in the hadiths as Sham, the region of the Levant, including modern-day Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan. Unlike typical fires that move quickly and unpredictably, the narrations describe this fire as traveling at a measured pace, stopping where people stop to rest at night and pausing where they rest during midday, essentially herding humanity like a shepherd guides his flock. Sahih Bukhari specifically states that the fire will gather people, accompanying them on their final journey, ensuring that no one escapes this ultimate migration. This fire represents the transition from worldly life to the gathering for judgment, as it drives every living person toward the appointed location where the hour will strike. After this fire completes its task of assembling humanity, the sequence of signs concludes, and the day of judgment itself arrives with the blowing of the trumpet. The imagery of fire emerging from the southern Arabian Peninsula and driving people northward emphasizes the inescapable nature of this final gathering, as all of humanity is compelled to move toward their ultimate destination and accounting. 20. The blowing of the trumpet. The blowing of the trumpet, known as the Sur, marks the actual arrival of the Day of Judgment itself, rather than merely a sign preceding it, representing the transition from worldly existence to eternal life. According to Islamic tradition, based on numerous Quranic verses and hadiths, the angel Israfil will blow into a massive trumpet, producing a sound that initiates the end of creation as we know it. The Quran in Surah Az-Zumar, verse 68, describes two distinct blows of this trumpet. The first blow, causes everything in the heavens and earth to swoon and die, with all living creatures perishing, except those whom Allah specifically wills to survive, though eventually even the surviving angels die. After a period known only to Allah, the second blow resurrects all of creation for the final judgment and accounting. During this resurrection, the earth will be transformed completely. Mountains will crumble to dust, the sky will be torn apart, and graves will split open as every human who ever lived stands before their Creator. Records of deeds will be opened, scales will be set to weigh actions, and the bridge over hell will be established. This moment represents the ultimate transition from temporary worldly life to permanent eternal existence, where every soul receives absolute justice and is assigned to either paradise or hell based on their faith and deeds. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.